This comparative study explores genre film noir through two different movies: The Third Man by director Carol Reed, released in 1949 UK, and The Pulp Fiction by Quentin Tarantino, released in 1994 US. The topic is evolution of film noir. The films were chosen to represent the evolution of noir films to neo-noir films and to have different cultural and historical contexts. The Third Man represents post-war Vienna in Europe at the end of 1940s, while Pulp Fiction represents 1990s post-Cold War decade in America. Film noir is a movie genre that emerged in the 1940s. It was an era in American cinema when there was a run of films with a dark, illusionistic lighting aspect, a crime-centered narrative, and a moral lesson. The techniques typically used include black and white movie with harsh shadows and low-key lighting, use of flashbacks, femme fatale, morally ambiguous characters, theme of death and violence, and allusion over depictions, meaning that, for example, themes like sex and violence are often suggested, but not shown explicitly. These different aspects create an overall sense of uneasiness and discomfort in the audience. Neo-noir, on the other hand, is the follow-up of the classic noir, a genre of film that use the visual style and themes of classic film noir but add a modern sensibility. They also usually contain more graphic depictions of violence and sexuality. This comparative study will use the characteristics of classic noir films and compare them in relation to the two chosen films. More specifically, moral dilemmas, lighting, theme of death and violence, as well as allusion over depictions are in the center of the study. The film The Third Man is set in post-Second World War Vienna, where book writer Holly arrives only to find out his best friend Harry Lime has died. He starts to investigate the murder further, accompanied by Lime's girlfriend Anna, and later finds out that Lime faked his death and was involved in illegal activities.
Harry.
Pulp Fiction follows a nonlinear story structure of two hitmen, their boss, and a boxer, as well as two robbers. The two hitmen discuss philosophical questions while doing their brutal job and end up in different paths.
What is a miracle, Vincent?
One of the main characteristics of classic noir films, moral dilemmas, are present in both films. Pulp Fiction highlights spirituality when answering the concept of good and evil. The other hitman finally figures out his moral compass through the divine intervention the hitmen encounter. Another one chooses the path of righteousness.
You really thinking about quitting? The life? Yeah. Most definitely. Fuck.
And the other one sticks with his old life, ending up dead as we can see from a flash forward. The fate of the two hitmen symbolizes how spirituality leads to a better life according to the narrative. This complements the historical context of 1994, since it was just before the downward trend of Christianity and religion in the USA, and the spirituality was one of the main aspects of people's everyday life. Director Tarantino wanted to raise questions in the audience concerning one's spirituality, the target audience being the young people leading the downward trend.
You read the Bible, Brett. Yes.
The Third Man has also moral dilemmas included, when Holly needs to decide whether to kill his best friend or not. The technique allusion over depictions is used when we hear the gunshot but don't see the death of Harry Lime. Holly isn't forgiven for his path of violence, but is left alone by Anna in the legendary wide shot that lasts almost 2 minutes and ends the movie. The juxtaposition of the shot symbolizes how close Holly came to getting Anna, his prize for a virtuous life, but she slips through his fingers. In the movie, the values appreciated and discriminated derive clearly from Christianity, which highlights the historical context of post-war. The Guardian writes about the movie's screenwriter. The Third Man is essentially Green's movie and is permeated with the art of Catholic beliefs, his feeling for immanent good and evil. The movie questions whether law and society can be against those Catholic beliefs, since especially divided and suffered places like Vienna didn't have strong and uncorrupted police force and governance at the time.
That's international police by an international patrol, one member of each of the four powers. Wonderful. What a hope they had, all strangers to the place, and none of them could speak the same language.
So, both movies use the moral dilemmas which lead the narrative structure to emphasize how values of Christianity lead to a good life. The second typical feature of noir is the theme of death and violence. The movies use different techniques and film elements to establish this, and I will be talking more specifically Dutch angles, lighting, and Tarantino's breaking of the classical film noir's rules.
And you will know my name.
As contrast to the technique allusion over depictions used in The Third Man, Pulp Fiction isn't scared to show violence on screen. Surprisingly tender about characters who commit cold-blooded murder, Pulp Fiction uses the shock value of such contrasts to keep its audience constantly off balance. Pulp Fiction uses detailed gore and violence, creating uneasiness and disturbance in the viewer, taking the typical graphic content of violence in neo-noir movies to the next level. Violence is also normalized by the characters' actions and reactions. For example, hitmen are more concerned about the car's interior than the young boy whose head was blown up by accident. It is ironic that the movie has a theme of righteous life while being generally perceived as one of the most violent films of the 1990s. The violence in the film is also ironic, since the violence per capita was at its lowest ever in the early 1990s USA, indicating no link to the cultural context.
Are you sure this is absolutely necessary?
However, the 90s was a time when audiences were keen to experience something new and exciting in theaters, so in his own way, Tarantino was also answering the audience's demand. One of the techniques in the third man to create a theme of death and violence is frequent use of Dutch angles. Dutch angles are harder for a brain to process and can result in a feeling of anxiousness. When building up the tension and anxiety of violence resulting in deaths, Reed uses Dutch angle in the movie recurrently. This is also used to represent Holly's reaction to babies dying in the hospital due to Lime's actions. Mise-en-scène combined with the Dutch angles create possibly even more powerful message than showing the babies themselves. Reason for not showing them can also arise from the movie's context. It had a relatively low budget, making it hard to create a hospital full of dying babies. Also, the historical context of UK in 1949 was significant, since showing cruelty to young infants could have led to the film's censor by British Board of Film Censors back then. One other aspect of cinematography in The Third Man used to show the ever closer creeping danger and violence is the use of darkness. Throughout the film, director Carol Reed skillfully employs low-key lighting and chiaroscuro techniques typical for noir films to create a visually striking and suspenseful atmosphere. Chiaroscuro, characterized by stark contrast between light and shadow, heightens the sense of tension and drama in key moments of the narrative. Whenever violence is foreshadowed or imminent, chiaroscuro is strategically used to enhance the overall impact and intensity of the scene. The Third Man is also a black and white movie, as is typical for noir films, further increasing the contrast between light and darkness. Unlike classical noir films, Pulp Fiction doesn't really include a great use of shadows and low-key lighting to create the intensity of violence and danger. With a couple of scenes as exceptions, mostly bright natural lighting is used combined with artificial lighting throughout the movie. Instead, as part of cinematography, Quentin Tarantino used recurring close-ups. With a lack of wide and full shots, the violent scenes didn't let the audience ease out from the scene. For the time, it was a revolutionary invention for Tarantino. Added to the prolonged shots with intricate detail of graphic content, the audience is forced to watch the intensive and unpleasant scenes from the beginning to the end.
Alright, count to 3.
A good example of this is when Mia is having a drug overdose and Vincent is stabbing her with an adrenaline shot. Vincent holds the needle in the air almost unnaturally long, while we see an extreme close-up of the deadly needle and the ridiculously small target it needs to hit.
3!
In conclusion, The Third Man and Pulp Fiction underscore the evolution of film noir to neo-noir, particularly in terms of moral dilemmas, violence, and cinematic techniques. While The Third Man employs subtle allusions and symbolic cinematography to convey themes of death and violence within the constraints of its historical and cultural context, Pulp Fiction confronts the audience with graphic depictions of violence reflective of Tarantino's stylistic choices and the changing cultural landscape of the 1990s. This evolution from discreet to explicit underscores the dynamic nature of neo-noir filmmaking, shaped by both artistic innovation and societal influences.